Welcome to a celebration of love featuring LGBTQIA plus love poems from Ploughshares, our Ploughshares archive. We're so happy you're here. Thank you so much for joining us and happy Pride. Um, I want to start by letting folks know that this reading will be recorded and posted on our website. So feel free to turn off your camera if you prefer. Our readers will be pinned for the majority of the reading. Um, I'm Jenny Molberg, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the editor-in-chief of Ploughshares. Big thanks to Kit Freeman, one of our senior poetry editors, who will be introducing our poets, as well as to our managing editor, Rachel Dillon, and our marketing associate, Lachlan Applegate, who will be Rachel and Lachlan will be our stagehands this evening, and they'll be sharing information about the poets in the chat. So stay tuned to the chat. Please feel free to use the chat to cheer on the writers, drop a line you loved, etc. But please do keep yourself muted for the duration of the reading. Um, when I interviewed for my position at Ploughshares, I shared an idea for one of my biggest passion projects, which was to celebrate and revisit the 55-year archive at Ploughshares, a journal that had published so many of my literary heroes, that continues to value emerging voices and shared curatorship with its guest edited issues. Now that I'm closing in on my first year working alongside our incredible staff, um, what has emerged from that passion project is PS, which is our new online series. PS is a postscript to our issues, a love letter to the archive, essays, dialogues, interviews, and readings, just like this one, that are free and available to the public, which celebrate, complicate, challenge, and cherish the rich history of poets and writers in our pages. Alongside the recording of this reading, Kit Freeman will publish an essay entitled The Archive is Queer, a Ploughshares Retrospective. In this essay, she explores the work of several of the poets reading this evening and their position within the Ploughshares archive. One of my favorite moments in her piece, which I'm excited for you all to read when it goes live on July 15th, is a beautiful metaphor she draws, comparing the making of a poem to building a home, which arises from her analysis of Jericho Brown's invented form, the duplex. That home extends back to our literary ancestors. That home, according to Freeman, is the often erased, often overwritten queer archive. Ploughshares was founded in 1971, as Kit reminds us, just 2 years after the Stonewall Uprising, by DeWitt Henry and Peter O'Malley at the Plough and Stars, which is an Irish pub in Cambridge. Fun fact, Van Morrison, the singer-songwriter of so many great love songs, wrote the album Astral Weeks, my personal favorite, at the Plough and Stars. In Sweet Thing on that album, Van Morrison sings, "And I shall drive my chariot down your streets and cry, 'Hey, it's me, I'm dynamite, and I don't know why. And you shall take me strongly in your arms again, and I will not remember that I even felt the pain.'" I wanted to host this reading today on June 26th to celebrate the legalization of gay marriage on this day in 2015. And like Morrison, I want to hold these joyous memories together and show everyone that poetry can and always will be a home, a landing place where we can hold each other strongly and feel unrestricted joy in celebrating love that fuels our lives. This feels especially important and radical these days when the voices of those who want to silence that joy feel especially loud and close. As Kit writes, celebrating the tactful use of pronouns in Eileen Myles' iconic poem Peanut Butter, "You are now a we, and we are not alone." I'm thrilled to have an absolutely stellar lineup of my favorite poets, many of our favorite poets, my literary heroes, who have all published love poems in Ploughshares. Kit Freeman, who, as I mentioned, is a senior poetry reader here at Ploughshares, is also a PhD candidate at Southern Methodist University and a former PEN America Literary Fellow. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kit to introduce our poets.
Thank you, Jenny, for such an incredible introduction. It truly is a pleasure to be here tonight and to celebrate the great poetry that all of you have provided to the magazine over the years. I'm thrilled that all of you have joined us, and it is my honor to introduce all of the poets tonight. Speaking of the first one, usually when I go to a poetry event, my fiction-loving wife patiently listens to the poetry readings in my babblings about them. But when I told her Eileen Myles will be reading, she audibly gasped. So this one's for you, Katie. Eileen Myles is a poet, novelist, and art journalist whose practice of vernacular first person writing has made them one of the most recognized writers of this generation. Pathetic Literature, which they edited, came out in the fall of 22. A Working Life, their newest collection of poems, is out now. They live in the city and in Marfa, Texas. Please take it away, Eileen.
Thank you. This is so fun to do, and I have to say I have my own. Being from Boston, I have my own Plough in the Stars anecdote, which is the great poet Fanny Howe was died about a year ago, and in the last few days that she was alive, she woke up when I think family members were around her, and she said, "I just dreamed that I was drinking in the Plough in the Stars with Eileen Myles," and I was like, "Oh my God," and I've been dying to see Fanny before she left this plane, and I love that I've not drank for like 40 years. It was amazing that I was drinking in her dreams with her before she died. So I don't know. I'm grateful to Plough in the Stars and Ploughshares too. So here's peanut butter. I am always hungry and wanting to have sex. That is a fact. If you get right down to it, the new unprocessed peanut butter is no damn good, and you should buy it in a jar, as always, in the largest supermarket you know. And I am an enemy of change, as you know. All the things I embrace as new are, in fact, old things re released. Swimming, the sensation of being dirty in body and mind. Summer is a time to do nothing and make no money. Prayer as a last resort. Pleasure as a means and then a means again with no ends in sight. I'm absolutely in opposition to all kinds of goals. I have no desire to know where this anything is getting me. When the water boils, I get a cup of tea. Accidentally, I read all the works of Proust. It was summer. I was there, so was he. I write because I would like to be used for years after my death. Not only my body will be compost, but the thoughts I left during my life. I was the woman with hazel eyes. Out the window is a crooked silo. Parts of your body I think of as stripes which I have learned to love along. We swim naked in ponds and I write behind your back. My thoughts about you are not exactly forbidden, but exalted because they are useless. Not intended to get you because I have you and you love me. It's more like a playground where I play with my reflection of you until you come back, and into the real you I get to sink my teeth. With you, I know how to relax, and so I work behind your back, which is lovely. Nature is out of control, you tell me, and that's what's so good about it. I'm immoderately in love with you, in love with all your new white hair. Why shouldn't something I have always known be the very best there is? I love you from my childhood, starting back there when one day was just like the rest. Random growth and breezes, constant love, a sandwich in the middle of the day, a tiny step in the vastly conventional path of the sun. I squint, I wink, I take the ride. Um, and then I'm going to read this short new guy, which is called Goat Office, which I have to say is a rhyme. I'm very proud of it when you get into. I went to the post office. I put on different shoes. You're walking on different stone. I look at your name. How can that be a name? Beautiful, northern, strange, walks, but keeping you in my pocket somehow. You could warm bread in me, all this love I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. That was absolutely beautiful. I love how you make the ordinary so extraordinary in both of these poems, but I especially am partial to Peanut Butter just because I've known it for so long, but Post Office was also beautiful. And I'm left wanting more, so thank you. It is my honor to introduce our next poet, Kelli Russell Agodon's newest poetry collection, Accidental Devotions, has just been released by Copper Canyon Press. The book is full of ghosts, desires, queer spirituality, grief, joy, smartphones, Emily Dickinson, and poems that ask what we accidentally give our attention to. In this poet's world, God might drive a convertible towards the sunset. Rilke might speak through a Ouija board, and even a typo can become a blessing. Kelli is the author of 5 books of poetry and the co-founder of Two Sylvias Press. She teaches at Pacific Lutheran University's low residency MFA program, the Rainier Writing Workshop, and co-hosts the poetry series Poems You Need with Melissa Studdard. Kelli lives in a small seaside town in Washington State, where she is now. Wait, no, you're in Washington right now, where she writes poems, paddleboards, and occasionally keeps company with the ghosts. Please, Kelli.
Thank you, Kit. Thank you, Ploughshares. And oh my gosh, this group I'm reading with, I am just so incredibly honored to have like all my favorite poets. So I get to read so I can listen to you. I'm thrilled. I'm going to read the Ploughshares poem first, which is in Accidental Devotions. It was inspired by something I read on Twitter when Twitter was Twitter. The tweet was, if you have a mermaid phase as a kid, you're probably bisexual now. And it just stayed with me. It's called Young Sirens. How did I not understand when I swam with my ankles crossed to make a fin? Or when I asked my friend to touch my arm, my skin? She wrote, "Love you, XO," on my rib cage in black pen. All summer we hid in my family's camper behind the daisy curtains, and it wasn't a sin when she put her lips on mine and said, "I'm new to this, I'm all in." All summer we kept finding more reasons to wear less. Together we walked into the salt water, hand in hand, said, "We'd be better with fins." All summer we sang to each other, our bodies a single tide. And when the boys who were cruel to starfish slipped into our waters, we hissed, said, "Only mermaids deserve this." And our parents couldn't see us because we were a friendship amid shells. How we held each other in front of everyone, and no one ever guessed. Thank you. And the second poem was inspired by a dream I had about Emily Dickinson, and there's a line in here by Dickinson that's "Open Me Carefully." And it's got a 4-line title, so the title is almost its own little poem. It's called "Devotion in Which I Kiss You in a Cemetery." Emily Dickinson comes to me in a dream and says, "Poetry may be our tombstone, but what an exhilarating epitaph." I'm stitching a spell for a spirit with a thread twisted from tenderness. The envelope is what I wear over my hips, a paper dress of blue handwriting. Open me carefully and watch jasmine spill from the sky. Somewhere under a meteor shower, 2 women make love on a gravestone because they didn't die, because they like to haunt the dead and steal their flowers. I admit there are too many lilies in the widow's garden. Dampness places its lips in her soil, in her sunrise. Did we vow ourselves to marriages or mirages, lit by lies, line breaks, and liabilities? It wears me down to think I have to choose one life. Eternity as a heartbeat of women embracing while holding the hands of men. "Tell me something taboo," she says as she letter opens my dress in a sacrament where we don't determine the dates on our tombstone. Our font, it has yet to be designed. Maybe desire is scribbled in the margins of the afterlife. You be the hips, I'll be the night. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelli. I have goosebumps. That was absolutely beautiful. I especially loved your use of line breaks, speaking of, with relation to the eroticism in both poems. And so thank you so much for such a beautiful reading. Next up is a poet that I have known for years. I've had the honor of working with in the past. And it is an absolute joy to introduce to you Chen Chen. Chen Chen's third book of poems, quintessential if earthly activities, is forthcoming from Boa Editions in spring of 2027. His two previous collections are Emergency Contact Has Experienced an Emergency, and When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a List of Further Possibilities, which was longlisted for the National Book Award. He has also written six chapbooks, most recently Love That For Us, a collaboration with Sam Herschel-Wien, and a book of craft essays in cahoots with the Rabbit God, forthcoming with Noemi Press at the end of the year. He lives in Rochester, New York, and teaches for the MFA program at New England College. And thank you for being here, Chen Chen.
Thank you so much, Kit. Thank you, Jenny, and thanks to everyone for being here. I'm super happy and honored to be reading with these poets. Okay, I'm just gonna jump into it because this is a little long. Um, the School of Eternities. Do you remember the two types of eternity? How we learned about them in a Wegmans parking lot when you turned on the radio, the classical channel? Why were they even talking about eternity? What did it have to do with the suddenly broody guitars? You had a peach Snapple. I remember the snappy kissy sound of the lid coming off in your hand. One type of eternity, they said, is inside of time, as endless time, life without death. We were inside our Toyota. I said, we need a new umbrella. Do you remember when we first rhymed? Do you remember the first time I asked you about the rain, the expression, it's raining cats and dogs, whether it was equally cats and dogs falling? Can you remember when you learned the word immortality? The hosts on the classical channel were okay. I thought you'd do a much better job. I remember saying so while you drove us home. Our apartment, our third. Remember the day we moved into our first, the boxes of books and boxes of books, my books, our sweating up 3 flights of the greenest stairs, and you said, never again, and the again and again, and. The other type of eternity is outside of time, beyond it, no beginning, no end. I remember your hand, the lid, your hands, the steering wheel, your lips, the way you took a sip, gave me a kiss before starting to drive. Do you remember the first time you drove me home, before home meant where we both lived, the books on the shelves, the books in the closet when I ran out of shelves, the second apartment, West Texas, remember the dust, the flat, another type of eternity, that dusty sun. And driving to the supermarket, what was it called there? And that hand soap we get, which scent was your favorite? I don't remember what it was called, can't remember exactly the smell, but your hands, after washing, I remember kissing them. Don't you remember when we thought only some things were ephemera? Can you remember when you learned the word ephemera, the word immortality? Probably the latter first, and isn't that something? Immortality first, then menus and movie tickets. What was the first nickname, the fifth umbrella, the type of taco you ordered on our 16th trip? Remember driving. Remember when we thought the world of the world. Remember how I signed the letter, explodingly yours. Do you remember you were driving? We were halfway home, only 8 minutes from Wegmans. Remember when we measured distance in terms of Wegmans, like it was a lighthouse or pyramid or sacred tree? Remember when your name was Fluttersaurus Vex and mine wasn't? Remember when I lived like a letter, falling in cartoonish slow-mo down 4 flights of stairs? Did you picture a letter of the alphabet or a letter I'd written to you? Remember when I asked you about the rain, when the wizard jumped out, when I lied and you laughed, when I lied and I lied and I lied? Can you remember last night how I crossed my arms as though dead and arranged just so, how I pictured my face polished as though alive? And no, you can't remember that, since it happened while you were sleeping, and I wasn't. I was up, wondering why people always talk about death as sleep, and how much I love sleep, hate death. And have I told you about the student who said, I'm really, really afraid of death, just like that, in class? It was fitting, because it was poetry class. Haha, And I loved it. Her saying that. I wanted to say I loved it, but couldn't. I was thinking about you sleeping and me not, about me sleeping and you not, and what even is outside of time beyond then, now. No, thanks. I'd prefer the type of eternity where we are inside, are us, and last night's movie good, not great. A stray piece of popcorn still under our coffee table. Do you remember when the world signed the letter, yours ephemerally? Remember when I asked you about the rain, the cats and dogs of it, if it was 50% cats, 50% dogs, 100% falling, and you said, of course. And you said, she's gotten, the flight's not till, I'm going to drive. I remember you driving to your mother, West Texas to upstate New York. You didn't make it in time, she had little time, then none. I remember your face pressed into my shoulder. I remember your mother was an endless, a question your face asked into my shoulder, how I wanted it to answer, but I couldn't. I didn't go with you when I could have. I chose a poetry reading instead. Thought she'll be there, you'll be. Is memory the best eternity we can make? The only and you said it's equal, the cats and dogs raining down, though in terms of overall volume. The rain, it's all the different breeds of cat, of dog, and see, there are more individual cats, since there are more very large breeds of dog. The cats have to balance things out with their number, but the dogs, don't you worry, they're raining down too. And their rain, absolutely, there's still rain, the cats and dogs, lots of water for the plants, for the flowers, for the whole street, and our dusty car windows, for the cats and dogs on the ground, the cats and dogs that aren't rain, at least not yet. And maybe that's another eternity, the rainy type. I remember you drove us home. The radio was on. We made a sound like a lid coming off. And then I'll just read this short poem by F. Douglas Brown called Makeout Sonnet. I think it's probably my favorite contemporary sonnet. Makeout Sonnet. The first time I saw two men kissing, I was 6, living in 1970s LA. My mom took care of an elderly woman who found herself in a fix and moved into a complex of all men, bare-chested men with cut-off jeans and tinted glasses. My mother's friend gave me chocolate that matched her skin. This must be heaven. These sons' asses peeked out beneath their shorts, but watched over her better than mom. Took donations for heat, a sofa, and a new wig. All changed her mood. They even did her laundry. They did sweet better than honey, did family better than blood. And between duties, two men, always off alone, so desire, like the dishes, could also get done.
Wow, thank you, Chen Chen, for both of those poems. I especially was so touched by your use of breath in the School of Eternities, and I actually felt my heart rate rise as the poem was kind of coming to an end. And so thank you so much for both of those poems. Our next reader is Jacques Rancourt, who actually has a second poem coming out in Ploughshares this winter, so stay tuned for that. Jacques Rancourt is the author of Brocken Spectre and Novena with Pleiades Press, as well as the chapbook In the Time of Prep. He has received fellowships from the National Endowment of Arts, the Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing, and Stanford University, where he was a Wallace Stegner Fellow. He lives and teaches in San Francisco, and I now let you take it away.
Thanks so much for all of you for being here. Thanks to Jenny, Kit, Rachel, Lachlan, and what a dream to be in such a dreamy company. I'm going to read that poem that is forthcoming from Ploughshares. So it's came out of my first experience with shrooms and psychedelics. It's called Eagle Death and Joshua Tree. The mountain range becomes two shepherds leaning against each other. A rock's colors drift, separating from texture like skin over boiled milk. Time rots. By now, the cacti blues. The neon grass undulates. After the sun sets, yips from a pack of coyotes chortle through the dark, and the stars above all sputter out like static. We lie on a picnic table. Our fingers touch. I forget my name. but not yours. And the second poem I'm going to read makes a reference to Nijinsky's controversial choreography, in which he has a faun simulate masturbation over a discarded nymph scarf. So I make a reference to that at the end of the poem. And this poem is called For the Cult-Themed Party. For the cult-themed party, I dressed as a stag. Headpiece of antlers, fabric flowers hot glued to a harness, my ass hanging out of a jock. Someone in a white tunic said, I looked straight out of Debussy's Afternoon of a Faun. Someone else said, more like Debussy. While others took Molly, and enough Viagra to counteract the Molly, or busied themselves in the woods gathering brush for the bonfire, a man I had grown to love took my picture among the hedges and saplings that the laurel had sprung up against. Wine drunk, we napped that afternoon in the casita, my palm resting on his belly, rising and falling to the slow flute of his breathing. Whatever he exhaled, I breathed in. We didn't fuck or even kiss. And through the skylight, the light changed from chamomile to lavender, from lavender to violet. The muffled, drunken yells outside persisted. We couldn't pretend to be asleep much longer. Even in Nijinsky's ballet, before its graphic depiction of desire, a faun first wakes center stage on a set adorned with white paper trees and a single shaft of light. Even in spring, his hair still cradled under my chin, I longed for spring. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jacques. What beautiful poems. I'm absolutely breathless at your forthcoming poem, and I'm so excited to see it in print. So thank you so much for reading. It is my pleasure to introduce to you guys Jaz Sufi, who is a queer Iranian American poet and arts educator. Her work has been published or is forthcoming in Best New Poets, Best of the Net, Agni, Black Warrior Review, Muzzle, and elsewhere. Her first chapbook, Catalog of Shadows, is forthcoming with Game Over Books. She is a National Poetry Slam finalist and has received fellowships from Kundiman, the Watering Hole in NYU, where she received her MFA. She is the current poet laureate of San Ramon on occupied Ohlone land, where she lives with her dog, Apollo. Please.
Hi, everybody. First, I know we can't hear each other applauding, but can we give it up for everyone so far? This has been such a good reading. Oh my God. I'm having such a good time. Let me pull up my poem right here. If you hear that jingling in the background, that is my dog Apollo, who decided he needed to be active just this moment. But this poem is called Notre Dame. Like a pomegranate, I wore my garnets quietly. Nude lip, beige tongue. I took the shape of clouds passing by. I was a tool for divination. You used me to find water and blamed me when I drank. We dreaded you together. Still, I kept my smile on, even when you hid the key to my mouth. I was so quiet back then that strangers were surprised when I spoke, and friends were surprised to find themselves strangers. If someone had asked me if I was happy, I would have answered, I'm in love. Sure, the constant chirp of the smoke alarm kept me up most nights, but you promised to change the batteries. Promises were like miracles God didn't have to follow through on, sweet bursts dissolved by the tongue. I devoured them and starved. Myself, my shape, all of it winnowed down to what would fit inside your closed fist, but it was inside your fist I found my key. I broke free like a bell. I ran, I rang, I rang. So that was that poem. And now I have to make a split-second decision because I've been going back and forth between these two poems so hard, but I'm going to go with my first thought, which is I'm going to read a love poem by one of my absolute favorite poets, Sam Sachs. This poem it was on, I'll even put it in the chat so you can read along for it as well. It is titled My Hole, My Hole. And if you're not reading along, it's the first one is whole, like hole in the ground. The second one is whole, like the whole thing. It's like Sam's a poet or something. So with that said, my hole, my hole. What to call you who I've slept beside through so many apocalypses, the kind that occur nightly in this late stage of the collapsing West. Boyfriend was fine, even though we are neither boys nor men, but love how it makes us sudden infants in the eyes of any listener, how it brings us back to some childhood we never got to live, that was, at the time, unlivable. My sweetheart, my excised sheep's heart, my fled garden, my metal garter. After yet another man calls his wife his partner at the dog park, it's clearly time to find another name for you. He says, it's my partner's birthday. We're going to Buca di Beppo, then Key Largo. And wild how quick a name becomes yet another vehicle through which to reproduce violence. Partner fit like a skin, and then that skin tightened and tore off. You, who are neither my chain Italian restaurant nor my all-inclusive vacation spot, not my owner or my only or my own, not my down payment or my dowry of sheep and crop, not lost, not loss. Apophasis is a way of naming what is by what is not. But what is? My boutonniere, my goofy queer, my salt, my silk, my silt, my slit, my top and my basement, my vanquished prostate, my battered apostate, my memory, my memory, my meteor. All these names for what exactly? To introduce what is to those who don't know. This is my whole. This is my whole. Take part of me. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Jaz, for such mesmerizing readings of both of the poems. Though we might not be able to see it, your use of line breaks in Notre Dame is absolutely breathtaking. And I feel like we were able to hear these line breaks in the second poem. And so I thank you for reading. Our next poet is Mark Wunderlich, who is an author of 5 collections of poems, including Matey, forthcoming with Grey Wolf Press, and 2 artist books with visual artist Thornton Dennerlein. He is currently writing poems to accompany an exhibition of photographs of artist Peter Hujar at the Morgan Library in New York, which will be set to music by composer Matthew Ricketts. He's executive director of the Bennington Writing Seminars graduate writing program and lives in New York's Hudson Valley. I give it to Mark now.
Thank you, Kit. And thanks to everyone at Ploughshares for inviting me to be here this evening. And it's so thrilling to be sharing this virtual stage with my co-readers and fellow queer poets. So thanks for doing this. I'm going to read this poem that appeared in Another Century in Ploughshares. It came out in 1999, and it's called Seen, as in Seen. In your field of vision, there is a place where no image is fixed. It is a place where injury carved its cave of nothing, gathered blackness around a splinter's wooden slip. One eye, you say, looks inward, while the other scans the world. One eye examines the self's invisible wanting. In that equation, I believe myself to be a point connecting one place to another, somewhere you paused to draw lines to the next warm station. I emit no light, no heat, but gather in cupped hands what fell to the ground when limbs were shaken by your copper wind. And the next poem I'm going to read is from this forthcoming book, and it's called matelotage, which is a French word that was used to describe the unions that pirates formed, in which they made agreements to share the spoils or to defend each other. And these were thought to be a kind of early form of queer marriage when they're talked about. It is also where we get the word matey from. So just file that away. So this is called, and this poem was described by someone, and I read it recently and said, called it both erudite and profane. And a girl could not wish for a better compliment. So there we go. Matelotage. If I were a pirate, I'd marry you as pirates do. You'd be a pirate too, I think. At least then we'd sink together when this ship we're in is blown through with cannonballs. At night on board, we'd swing side by side in our hammocks, stinky sacks, sleeping on our backs, the only choice. We roam the salty seas with our crew of salty brothers, us pirates forever other, outsiders, misfit, strange. We let our beards grow long, twist them into braids, arrange gull bones, crab claws in each other's short and curly hairs, our beards a pirate love spell or charms against drowning, which is the same thing. Memories growing from our chins, all our secrets whispered in. Ahoy, sails, our boatswain cries, and you and I jump, strap our cutlasses to bony waists, ready ourselves to board ships. By your side, I smell your unwashed skin, my own smell mixing in with your goatish funk, my ocean bottom spunk dried in a sloppy constellation on your chest as we prepare to cut our victims down or die. This time the lily-livered panty waists succumb, lying face down on deck as we direct. We rob them of coins, gold chains, pearl earrings, and of their fancy clothes. I claim the calicos, the petticoats and lace, a corset of whalebone with abalone stays. Back on our ship, I dress in outlandish drag, my sweaty member hardening underneath a stolen skirt, as all us freebooters caper drunk on rum to the hurdy-gurdy's buzzy grind and wheeze. Surprised by my newfound beauty, I know I'll soon be pleasing you, pilfered petticoats hitched up on my back as you pummel me from behind. It's a drunken party tonight as we run our fingers through doubloons. You invite our pirate brothers to take a turn, and I'm the pass-around pirate booty for the night of shipboard reverie. Matey, you whisper hotly in my ear, into which you've punched a nail of solid gold. Matey, I shout back, as the waves propel us devil knows where, the night's breath blowing through our dirty, tangled hair.
Wow. I am utterly speechless, Mark. Thank you so much. It's such a fun poem. And also, yes, erudite and profane. A poet once told me years ago at a seminar that every poem should be read out loud. And I think that this poem is poetry reading out loud par excellence. And so thank you for reading that so beautifully. I just want to take a second and give a round of applause virtually to all of the poets who came and spent their evening with us, especially during Pride Month. It is so appreciative and it's so fun to all be in the same room, albeit virtually. So I wanted to thank also Jenny and Rachel and Lachlan and the rest of my team who made this event happen. It feels like we were talking about this event a while ago, and it's what a pleasure to see it come to fruition. And so thank you all. Because it is Friday night and we all probably have plans after this, I wanted, if you had a glass, to raise one. I'm going to toast to the readers. I wanted to end the night with a toast because it is a celebration. So So here's to that. Here's to everyone who came to celebrate love this evening, and to our gracious readers, all icons of queer love and excellence. Thank you to Jenny, Rachel, and Lachlan for helping put on this event. And thank you to Ploughshares team for making everything run so smoothly, especially at our first virtual event. To poetry, to love, and with that, a good night.